everyone, I'm Amethyst and welcome to Ask an Autistic.
I want a renaissance to shine a light, be the change we want, set things right. We've been waiting in the dark for so long.
Central Auditory Processing Disorder is a neurological condition that is common amongst autistic people, but like SPD or dyspraxia, does also occur in non-autistics. Before we look deeper into CAPD, I want to make a brief note here about receptive language disorders. As Mel Baggs has said, although the two terms are sometimes incorrectly used interchangeably, having an auditory processing disorder and a receptive language disorder are actually two different things. It is possible to have both CAPD and a receptive language disorder, but they don't always go hand in hand. A receptive language disorder is a form of cognitive impairment defined by issues understanding language of any or all forms. But receptive language issues do deserve their own video, so I'll stop there. To sum up, CAPD and receptive language disorders are two different things. To put it simply, CAPD is a breakdown in the communication between the ears and the brain. A person who has CAPD probably has functional hearing structures, but the brain struggles to filter, sort, recognize, isolate, prioritize, process, and remember auditory input. And that's a lot, with the most common struggles surrounding spoken language. This makes sense as most people talk pretty quickly, and a lot of information comes at you all at once in a spoken conversation. Considering dialects, accents, and speech impairments, and a person with CAPD can face daunting struggles just trying to order a meal or have a conversation with someone. And this is to say nothing of the background noise of daily life. There's blenders and coffee bean grinders and traffic sounds, car radios, and everybody's raised voices just filling up restaurants, the music blaring from shops and in cafes. Well, you get the idea. So what is having an auditory processing disorder like? What do you experience day to day? The thing to keep in mind as I explain, using some examples from my own life too, is that our society is pretty obsessed with spoken language, and there tends to be very little acceptance or leeway for anyone who struggles with it. The other thing to remember is that every brain is different, and that goes for autistic people and people with CAPD or other auditory processing disorders. But some common CAPD experiences include having difficulty picking out voices or certain sounds in noisy environments. It's pretty common to always be asking pardon or what, or could you please repeat that? And you can say it like 100 times in a conversation, it feels sometimes. Missing or misunderstanding spoken instructions at school or at work is really common. Forgetting the spoken instructions or directions that you've already received and needing directions to be repeated for you. Having difficulty distinguishing between the different sounds in words, sometimes because of similarity, like confusing a ch sound with a th sound, and experiencing a delay in hearing someone speaking or realizing that it is speech, or knowing that someone is speaking but being unable to pick out the actual words, and their voice may actually sound distorted, as if they're underwater, or like the adults in Charlie Brown. Focusing on or completing an activity is a struggle when other sounds are happening, and you can find yourself easily distracted from the task at hand. Difficulty with reading, comprehension, spelling, vocabulary, writing, and learning a new language are all very common, and so is having trouble in school, particularly with following along in lectures and taking notes, or with oral audio testing and verbal math problems posing particular challenges for some of us. You might also have difficulty following long conversations, and you might become more fatigued by socializing more quickly than neurotypical people. And finally, a slow or non-existent response to spoken engagement is common. The classic example being the autistic child with an auditory processing disorder who doesn't respond to their parents calling their name. A deer in headlights look when asked a question is also pretty common. And both those examples, can look like hearing issues or deafness at first glance. Not every autistic person will have CAPD, and not every person with CAPD will experience every trait or every symptom. And like most facets of a neurodivergent person's abilities, CAPD can fluctuate in intensity, and it is often worsened by stress, like being tired or being sick. So a person with CAPD may be able to follow a conversation along fine or pick lyrics out from music one day, but may struggle with the same things the next day. And this doesn't mean the struggles aren't valid. It's just variable, and so understanding is key. When it comes to auditory processing issues, a lot of people, even professionals and doctors, will dismiss a person's struggles with CAPD because often, when tested, their hearing itself isn't impaired, which makes doctors and parents think that there's nothing going on. But there is. It's all just happening neurologically. The issue isn't the structure of the ear or the hearing. It's sensory. It's the brain's ability to recognize, identify, sort, and process the sounds from their environment, which I keep repeating, but it's kind of like the central idea of what CAPD is. So the first and best way that you can support someone with auditory processing issues is to believe them. The second best thing to do is ask the person in question about their experiences, to listen, and to trust that they know their brains best. And even if they're a child, they might have some insights into their auditory issues that you wouldn't have thought of. When communicating with people with auditory processing issues, respect and patience are important. When you speak, try to enunciate and speak at a speed that works for the person listening to the best of your ability. You can try to make sure that the person isn't getting left behind by asking, did you get all that, or does that make sense? In group conversations, you can check in with the person every so often, and you can lead others by being conscious of how fast and clearly you're talking. If you are getting the deer in headlights stare, or if the person with auditory processing issues keeps saying what or asking you to repeat yourself, let them know it's okay, and try repeating yourself a little slower and just a little bit louder. You can also try phrasing your sentence more simply if it got kind of rambly like I often get. If a conversation continues to be a struggle, you can also look around the environment or ask the person, is there any background noise that could be interfering with their ability to pick out your voice? And keep in mind that people with CAPD may be able to hear or perceive things that you can't or don't, like the whine of electronics that are on but on standby, or the buzzing of a light. And also, something that doesn't seem loud or bothersome to you may be very loud and very bothersome to somebody with sensory issues. And if a person with CAPD tells you that they are having trouble understanding you, you can ask what you can do to help. For example, they may need you to turn and face them when you speak, so that they can use lip reading in combination with listening to understand what you're saying better. You can also try to use more straightforward sentences if that's something that you and the person with CAPD have found helpful, although you always want to avoid speaking to a person of any age as if they were a dog or a very small child or incapable of understanding. Tone definitely matters, and there are ways to speak clearly and simply without using the dreaded voice. All you disabled people out there, you know what I mean. For parents of kids with CAPD, there are some things you can do to help make sure that home is a safe place where your child can recharge and rest, because the world is loud, so you need to have a safe haven. The first thing is to reduce the amount of background noise going on. I have been inside homes where the radio is playing in the kitchen, the television is playing in the living room, and a bunch of people are there all trying to talk over this noise, which means they're all pretty much shouting. This makes for a particularly unfriendly and exhausting environment. So my first tip is, if the television is not in use, turn it off. Same with the radio, and to try to keep music volumes low. And if you are trying to have a conversation with your child, or if your child needs to be engaged in an activity that requires auditory processing or concentration, try to make the environment as peaceful and quiet as possible. This especially goes for homework time. The kitchen table or the living room is often too stimulating and breaks focus. So a dedicated homework area, even just a corner, in the quietest location you can find, is a good idea. If reducing the ambient noise isn't possible, like when there are noisy siblings around, providing earplugs or ear protection or noise-canceling headphones, which if you want can play white noise or quiet, calm instrumental music with no lyrics, those things can help. And if your child has trouble understanding or recalling spoken instructions, you can provide them in a visual format so they can understand, like a picture and/or word schedule, or a chart that breaks their activities or chores or self-care into smaller steps. And as you work together to find a system that works for your child, keep in mind that auditory processing struggles are real and that frustration is expected. But hopefully with understanding and willingness to accommodate your loved one with CAPD, their individual needs, life can be a lot less frustrating. While every child is different and will have their own sensory processing needs, there are some accommodations for a classroom type environment that can be generally helpful. These include making an effort to speak clearly and loudly enough, reducing background noise as much as is possible, giving a student with CAPD a spot at the front of the classroom so that they can see and hear better, allowing the student to take tests or work on assignments in a quieter area if they feel they need to, encouraging the use of assistive devices in class, such as a recording device to record lecture, or a personal FM system, which is a system in which the teacher wears a microphone and the student with CAPD wears a receiver. You can also allow students to wear ear protection or noise-canceling headphones in class when they need to. And you can think about providing an aid to assist in note-taking, following instructions, or clarifying information and answering questions, if that sounds like it would be helpful for the person in question. Schools can also consider making the classroom a better auditory sensory environment overall. Some suggestions include adding carpeting, acoustic ceiling tiles, window treatments like curtains, and replacing light fixtures or light bulbs with lighting that doesn't hum or buzz. These are positive changes that actually make for a better learning environment for everyone, neurotypical or not. We all have sensory needs after all. And it is useful to note that much of this can apply to a workplace as well, like improving the sensory environment, decreasing ambient noise, providing printed notes or minutes from meetings, and giving instructions in writing, like through email. I hope that this video was informative for everyone watching. If you have auditory processing disorder and you feel so inclined, please join in the discussion in the comment section under this video. I'm wondering, for you guys, what is CAPD like for you? And what areas of your life does it affect? And what are your tips and tricks for getting by in a very noisy world? And finally, what would you like people who don't have CAPD to know? If you have a topic that you would like to see covered in a future video, please feel free to post it in the comment section or message it to me. And as always, sources and further reading on today's topic can be found in the video description below. Thank you for watching Ask an Autistic.
I want a renaissance to shine a light, be the change we want, set things right. We've been waiting in the dark for so long.
Just go lie down or something. Ouch. Kitty is using the toilet right now as I'm trying to film.